All right, hello everyone. I hope you had a nice lunch, but I also hope you kept a little bit of space in your stomach because we have a treat today. A wonderful group of founders. Obviously they have a very international background, but they're all building their businesses here in Japan. So I'm Matthew, and you're not here to hear from me, you're here to hear from this wonderful group. So we're going to get started with a brief introduction from each panelist, and then some questions. So starting it off, please, Oya.
Hi everybody, I'm Oya. I'm originally from Turkey. I was born and raised in Turkey, but I've been living in Japan for 18 years. I studied here, I started working here, and then I founded Oira, the company that I'm running now here in Japan. At Oira, we do remote interpretation service. Through an app, you can call 153 interpreters of 153 languages on demand. And yeah, happy to be talking at this stage. Thank you.
Wonderful. So we're just going to go down the line.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Erica. I'm actually Japanese, but I spent quite a bit of my life outside Japan, in UK, and also in the States. I actually started my career as a material scientist at Sumitomo Electric Industries. And then I became actually very interested in how businesses operate and are built on great people. And so I became very interested in the people aspects of running a business. And so I moved to the States, did an MBA at UCLA, and changed to being an HR professional. So I continued working there, doing HR, HR strategy, performance management, and so forth. I came back to Japan 5 years ago and started Selective. Selective is, in a nutshell, we have the best freelancers in Japan. We pre-screen our freelancers, and we provide opportunities for these freelancers to collaborate with companies. So that's us in a nutshell. And in terms of fundraising, we're pre-A stage. We have raised around 410 million yen. So that's me.
Hello, my name is Raul. I'm originally from Estonia, but been in Japan for quite many years. So I first came 2001 as an exchange student, did my master's in Japan, went back to Estonia, worked for Estonian government, but I've been back in Japan more than 10 years now as an entrepreneur. So I started by doing kind of like freelance market entry support, and I created a company importing Japanese beer and sake to Europe, but also, yeah, but right now with Giga, it's my kind of second tech startup I'm involved with. And if you are a foreigner living in Japan, most likely, like what's your experience with Japanese banks? Do you like Japanese banks and banking services? No. Okay, so I'm trying to solve that. So basically, Giga is, we are not a bank, but we connect with real banks over APIs. And we provide multilingual, basically banking services, putting together like a Japanese bank account, payment card, remittance, and more services in the future. So we try to make basically banking delightful in Japan. Yeah, thank you so much.
Wonderful. So just to get a sense of the audience, how many of you are running your own company or an entrepreneur, startup? Okay, just a few. How many of you, if you're working in a company that's not yours, does that company do cross-border or has some kind of international flavor? Just a few. Okay, don't be shy. We have a couple seats if you want to come in and sit down. All right, great. You're participating. Have a seat. So let's ask, what makes Japan special for you and your business?
Yeah. So for me personally, I had no interest 18 years ago when I came to Japan first, because I came here for a summer internship for 2 months, and I was very much interested on semiconductors only. And then I came to Japan, and I was not in Tokyo or Kyoto. I was in Shiga Prefecture in Minakuchi. It's a very small town. But what happened is that after I came here with like no interest, not much expectations, I fell in love with Japanese people. Like, they were so nice, so kind, too good to be true. And so for me, what makes Japan special, personally, Japanese people. But for OIRA, Japan is actually a really nice, a really good country, really good market for us because there are like language barriers, and we support Japanese companies, we support Japanese people. Very global business, but like our biggest market is Japan. So in that sense, Japan is a great market. And also another reason is that there are many different language groups in Japan, meaning foreigners from Vietnam, Korea, Indonesia, the diversity is great. So we support these niche languages coming from people coming from Southeast Asia, and we collect data. So it's also a really good source of data collection for us.
Nice. And so for Erika and Raul, your businesses are kind of in regulated industries. We got HR and we got fintech. And so working in Japan, how has the regulation either supported you or been a challenge?
Yeah, sure. I think that overall, in terms of business trend, it has really supported our business. Previously, Japan is really built on focused on building teams with full-time people, and it's starting to change in terms of trend for freelancers, and obviously remote work has accelerated that. The other thing that has been pretty challenging for freelancers in Japan is there's a lot of word-of-mouth contracts in Japan. In the States, a lot of contract law, and people definitely have paper and executed contracts, but here there's still a lot of handshake deals. And so freelancers have been hurt by just a word-of-mouth contract and then companies not paying them. And so from October this year, there's going to be a new regulation for freelancers to ensure that any company that has more than 1000 yen in Nihonkin, they have to have a contract in place for freelancers, and the freelancers need to be paid in 60 days of having done the work. So it's been really great in terms of the Japanese country supporting freelancers here.
That's really interesting. I've noticed in working both with companies in the United States and in Japan, sometimes what takes 15 pages or more in a contract in the United States, you can do in 1 page in Japan. Why is that? Because so much actually is built on the relationship with the party that you're working with. But then it leads to some challenges that obviously the government is recognized and trying to fix. Very cool. And then on the fintech side, I mean, finance, hugely regulated.
Yeah, in a way, I'm lucky to be from Europe, where open banking has been, a thing already for almost a decade. So what I'm able to do is that I've been able to see how those new regulations can be used. And then coming to Japan, the regulations are kind of similar, but a bit more recent. And Japanese regulators, they actually want to see more financial innovation. That's why they are taking, learning from other countries and taking regulations to the next level. And for us, what we have found out is that actually regulators usually happy to see us doing innovative things, whereas it's more difficult to work with other participants in a financial market because Japanese banks they're really afraid of the regulator, and they also sometimes are more strict than they actually have to be. So that's basically maybe the main challenge working with them. But there's also a flip side. In Japan, kind of old regulations still persist and very often still determines outcomes today. So in my field, for example, maybe also some of you have experienced that, is that as a foreigner, if you're not working in Japan, your first 6 months you're not allowed to create a bank account very often because you're not considered to be a resident. Why? Basically because there is a ministry communication, it's not a law, ministry communication from 1980 defining that you are a resident if you stayed in Japan for 6 months or longer, or if you work for a Japanese company. So it means that company employees are able to open bank accounts faster, but if you're a student, first 6 months you will not be considered to be a resident. Although you might have my number card, you might have resident, your address is registered into the local government population registry. So yeah, so Japan, instead of having new regulations, they should also sometimes get rid of old ones too.
Fascinating. How many have struggled to open a bank account in Japan? You want to raise your hand? A couple individuals, okay. So to understand a bit more about your businesses, can you share sort of an ideal customer profile? Like what's their ideal user for your platform?
So we provide on-demand remote interpretation services. So I see some foreigners here already. So foreign people, for instance, living in Japan is one of our targets. The second is, of course, the Japanese side, right? Japanese companies or stores, shops who are welcoming foreign customers. So they can, for instance, like real estate agents. So when foreigners look for houses in Japan, they go to the store, so the real estate agency use our on-demand interpretation services. And also like large companies, for instance, who has Japanese expats living outside Japan. So these expats and their families living outside Japan, like living in non-English speaking countries like Poland or Hungary, they use our services as well when they go to the hospital or in their daily lives. That kind of.
Got it. So I use the term customer, but actually you sort of have two groups of users. You have those that need the interpretation service, but also those that provide it.
Right.
So how do you find sort of both groups?
Yeah. So actually, we spread pretty much by word of mouth. Word of mouth for the interpretation acquisition. First, of course, like when I started Oira, of course we had no. Brand.
Kind of a chicken and egg problem.
Yeah. So what I did is actually when I founded Oira, I knew that problem would happen. So right after we launched, what I did is we went to a global conference for interpreters, professional interpreters, and it was in the United States. So we had a booth there. So I hired many interpreters there. So that was a good start. Yeah.
Wonderful. And Erika, what's your sort of ideal customer profile? I guess you also have sort of both sides.
Yeah, for sure. Similar to Oya, we have a two-ended market. We have the highly skilled freelancers who have at least 5 years of professional experience, having provided real output at companies. And then we also have companies looking to hire them. And so in terms of the talent side with the freelancers, like I mentioned, it's people that have good amount of professional experience, but they're looking to maybe go out by themselves to have a challenge. Because when you can take on multiple projects as a company, you can really grow fast. I used to also be a freelancer at a point during my time, and being able to take on multiple projects rather than just working for a single company, you can really grow very fast. So folks like that is on our talent side. The ideal customer profile on the company side is companies looking to build teams very quickly. So just to give you a little bit of background context of why I started this business, when I was going outside of Japan to study abroad, it was in a time where Japan was on top. Mini disc, which I guess is like extinct now, but if I brought a garake from Japan, and like mini discs from Japan, everyone was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. And now we're at a point where things are kind of a little bit going down for Japan, and I find that it's because of the fact that companies aren't able to build teams quickly. And so what we do is how do we help companies augment their teams, not with just full-time employees, but with highly skilled freelancers, being able to bring the talent and the knowledge you need to drive the business. And so our ideal customers are looking to have that kind of knowledge brought into the company quickly. And people who are open to freelancers, I think, is very important for us.
Absolutely. So I've had a chance to get to know these wonderful founders over the years, and I know Raul has a fascinating story that I'd love for you to share about sort of the banks, Japanese banks know that there's this problem that exists, and so you're helping them solve it, but they kind of are turning a blind eye to it. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so for me, basically, essentially, the kind of issue what we are solving is kind of trust issue. So if you move to a new country, usually your access to financial services will be less than in your home country, at least for a while. And Japan is kind of in a way good country to start about that, because it's also kind of quite basic access to financial services is challenging because of language, but also because Japanese banks don't really trust foreigners that much. And in a way, I understand the bank side as well, because when I started, like kind of researching for Giga, like what I heard a lot was that, oh, foreigners are selling and buying bank accounts. And I was like, okay, that cannot really be like a kind of a big issue. But in a way, if you think about what a kind of traditional Japanese bank account looks like, it's a bank book and a cash card, right? So like if you leave Japan and you're able to sell your bank book and the cash card to the next person, then you make some money, and like you don't really care because you're leaving the country anyway. And I was looking around and I found there was a Facebook group mostly for Vietnamese, and it was like an industry. Like there are like hundreds or thousands of bank books in a picture, and yes, we are kind of buying and selling. But in a way, that's why would people buy those bank books, is because very often they're challenged to open one for themselves. So basically they need to get a part-time job, they need to get paid, and then they buy a bank account from somebody, like with somebody else's name, and they use that to get actually salary. So in a way, banks create this situation also by their attitude. But yeah, so like in our case, of course, like our main customer is a foreigner, like living in Japan. But also, in a way, we are solving a problem for banks too, because Japanese banks, they don't really make money out of retail customers unless they give loans. And as a foreigner, you don't really qualify for loans anyway. So basically, there is no way a Japanese bank can make money out of it, although fees are pretty high. So, and then they have to do language support, maybe stronger anti-money laundering practices as well, extra investment. So for them, okay, they need to invest extra money to serve customers who cause them to lose more money. So it doesn't make sense. So like with Giga, if you are between the bank and the end user, we can actually at least make those customers kind of neutral for the bank. And also we work with companies hiring foreigners, because today very often they have to send employees to the bank with a new employee, so basically to help them to open a bank account, and extra cost, extra time. Yeah, so in a way, like end users, banks, and also like companies hiring foreigners. So we are able to solve issues for all of them.
Awesome. So I'm curious how, you're based in Japan, you have international teams, maybe even some overseas. And so how have you approached building your team in Japan, but also sort of maintaining, the communications, and how have you sort of built up your company culture? So let's turn around, maybe starting with Erika.
Sure. So our team is predominantly based in Japan. We did start right in the middle of COVID in 2020 January. So at the time, everything was super remote, and so we did have developers from Barcelona, also developers in Japan, and really we were developing our platform through 24-hour cycle, which was awesome. But then COVID ended, and we got to a point where the framework the platform was built, but now it was really about starting to get our ideal customers on board. And so we started to build more of a physical-based team in Japan, because of the fact that having built a team remotely, it was very hard to build a connection, because there are some team members who are Japanese, team members that's international. Some people speak both languages, but some people don't. And so it became a challenge for us to solve. How do we build a personal interaction with everyone with this language barrier? And so then we started doing like board games once a month, drinking together, things that sometimes like you don't need the language to be able to overcome. And so we are now building a team in a hybrid model. But the other thing is we really walk the talk in terms of hiring freelancers onto our team as well. And so, we use our own platform to hire the highly skilled freelancers, which has been great. If they fell in love with us, they may have turned into full-time employees. but a good percentage of our team are freelancers, and we love the agile and nimble way of building teams.
Awesome. I love the concept of dog fooding, using your own business, your own service as yourself to put yourself in the shoes of the customer and the user. Do you do that as well, Raul, with your service?
Yep. With Giga, basically, like we've been building the team since 3 years ago, and we were kind of global remote from the beginning. So, like coming from Estonia, I wanted to tap into the fintech knowledge from Estonia. So, like Wise is from Estonia. There are like lots of globally successful fintech companies. So, I wanted to basically use that knowledge to solve a problem in Japan. So, we hired tech people in Estonia from the beginning, and engineers were remote from the beginning. So we had, at one point I counted, we had people in a team, 10 different nationalities living in 5 different countries. So in Japan also we had a quite international team, like in Japan as well. And also, if people ask me like how many people do I have in my team, it's kind of difficult to say because there are many people who are like not full-time but contributing like partly, so kind of it's exactly the same thing. So I guess that's a new way how to build a business. So like you're not actually confined to a place. Sometimes if your service is in Japan, it's better to still have like product knowledge like in the location, because you need to understand the context, kind of business culture. There will be understanding about partners. But overall, I think remote work works. But also important is to get together once in a while. And maybe you can save money on the office. You don't need that big office, but then you need to actually spend money on getting the team together. So, and now Japan is relatively cheap, so it's actually great to bring your team together in Japan. So,
fascinating. And so, Oya, I know you're at least trilingual. Maybe you speak other languages I don't know, but Turkish, English, and Japanese.
And a bit German.
And a bit of German.
A little bit.
So, have you had the need to use Oida, your own service as well?
Yeah, especially when I travel abroad. So I like countries like Peru, or I've been to, for instance, like Cuba, and like where, like these are the countries where I don't speak the language, right? And they are not necessarily good in English as well. So I used my service a lot when I was traveling abroad. And those are the times actually what makes you, proud in a way. But other than that, at Oida we also hire interpreters because we have to do quality control. We have to have more expertise from, different interpreters, professional interpreters as well. So around, I think, 20% of our employees are also like professional interpreters.
Fascinating. So now that you all of you have spent a significant part of your life outside Japan, and I'm curious if there's anything in particular that you feel you've have some part of your culture from home that you've applied as you've built out your team in your startup here in Japan. Maybe starting with Raul.
So for like in Estonia is a small country, so there is no market, so like 1.3 million people. But what's great about it is that you can fail fast. And failing fast means that you can learn the correct way of doing things quickly as well. In Japan, usually attitude about failure is a little bit different. And like if everything is not perfect, it's considered to be like a big issue with quality. So in a sense, like what I struggled in Japan a lot is that like basically like for what I actually want, I want to bring my product in front of customers fast. So I know it's not perfect yet, but I want them to try it. I want to get some feedback and fix it based on the feedback. Not to spend like too much time like thinking by myself, but actually getting to a kind of real life exposure as fast as possible. But in Japan, and especially in financial services, that's a very difficult thing to do because you have also like partner companies, and if you have a bug, it will be reported as an incident very often. So it's in a way it's more difficult to kind of do this kind of fast iteration, and maybe it takes more time to actually reach this understanding of what is the correct way of doing things.
How about you, Erika? Something you've brought from your time abroad that you're trying to apply as you build your team in Japan?
Sure. I think let me share what didn't work and what we're now doing. You know, being in the States, it's a very direct communication language. You say your point, and then you're asking for the response back. And we were communicating in that way, but we noticed it's not working, especially with our customers, our B2B customers, big, large enterprises, and where the person is a Japanese counterpart. And I realized Japan is a very context-driven environment, and everything is built on trust. It's less transactional in the sense of what kind of value can you provide me, but can we trust you? And then on top of that, what kind of value can you provide? And so before, we had a preference of trying to do all of our meetings online, because it meant that we didn't have to travel, we could really efficiently use our time. But we really changed our approach in terms of you know, working and collaborating with large companies. If there's an opportunity to meet these folks in person, we definitely choose the in-person option so that they can really see us. We can you know, let them know why we're building our business, what's the value that we can provide, to really build that trust. And trust is everything here. And so we always take the time to let them get to know us, but for us to really understand what's their challenge and how can we possibly help them.
And how about you, Oya?
Well, I 1000% agree to both Erika and Raul. On top of that, I want to add two things. The first is what's really hard, or what was really hard, is that Japan has very hard concepts or very hard mindset on certain things. For instance, years ago, way before Corona, when I had my office in a co-working space, I lost actually a large Japanese company on our very final meeting. They wanted to visit our office, and they came and they were like, oh, it's like, wow, you have a really big office. I'm like, no, I mean, this is a co-working space, and you know, here is my team. And they're like, oh, okay, there are other companies? And then, anyways, like, it was like co-working space back then was not well perceived, and we lost that large company as a client on our very final meeting just because we were in a co-working space. Now, after, you know, this co-working space is very global, all the other countries have it. Finally, Japan, you know, was okay with co-working spaces and all. So that also happened with not having a fax number. So in the past, I emailed to a government office, and they called me right away. And I'm like, yeah, thank you, blah, blah. They asked me to send the document by fax. And I was surprised. What, didn't you get the PDF? And they said, yeah, we got it. But can you please send it through fax? And I was like, I'm really like, this didn't make any sense. So that kind of like concepts were both fun and funny, but also like challenging, because as a, you know, startup, and in a, you know, like being in the tech space, I'm like, fax, like, what year are we in? So that's number one. Number two is actually, I think we are still having that challenge, not at Oira, but in the startup community, is that many large companies and also like the government, when you go there to for sales talk, you know, you want to sell your product, they ask about if you have a track record or a similar kind of like client in the past. For instance, if you are talking to a let's say a maker, they really care if you actually provide services to their peers or, you know, like other maker companies. So if you don't have jiseki, then, you know, like it's kind of almost impossible to start, right? And startup by nature starts with no jiseki. So that was like in the beginning very, very hard actually, and very confusing.
Interesting. I'm actually kind of curious. Raise your hand if you've used a fax machine in the past month. One person. Wow, impressive. All right. Well, I guess we still have to keep them because you need the other recipient to also have it, right? So it takes two. So how about what as you build up your businesses, and I'm actually kind of curious if Giga has other markets outside Japan, but also what you would take, if there are, what you would take that you've learned as you built your business in Japan overseas.
So for us, we actually start, like, it's kind of interesting because we still have parent company in Estonia, but the first and only market at the moment is Japan. But we do see opportunity to expand to similar, like countries with similar challenges, especially in Asia. So, and mostly to follow actually our customers. So our customers are mostly coming from Southeast Asian countries, and they do go to like other Asian countries as well. So I've been looking into Middle East quite a lot. There are basically countries with 90% of like basically people living there are actually foreigners, and quite many of those people come from the same countries where people come to Japan as well. So in this sense, yeah, like in a way, like we are providing like banking services in Japan to foreigners living in Japan, but essentially the problem we are solving is like this cross-border trust issue. So if you move to the next country, you lose the trust, and what we want to do, we want to make this trust kind of portable or passportable. I think that's actually the exact term, so that people also, like after you live in Japan for some time, maybe you go back to your home country, and you go back to some country, and you're able to, I don't know, like use your trust you built up in Japan to get a loan to buy an apartment back home, which is today also a challenge, because if you stay away from your home country for a while, you come back, you're kind of like a new person in your home country.
Fascinating. And so for Erika, I know HR is sort of labor laws and regulations in other countries are very different often, but is there another market that you think you could imagine Selective expanding into, and what's something that's you've learned in Japan that you might implement or take to that new market?
Sure. We are definitely focused on helping Japanese companies build teams here because of the fact that freelancing is pretty, normal or more advanced in other countries. And so, as we look for opportunities, we think about more of how can we help Japanese companies globalize. And typically in Japan, it's very domestic talent, not many people speak English, and so it's very hard if they want to go outside of Japan to suddenly expand. And so that's something that I think we can help with. We have a lot of bilingual talent on our platform. About 30% of our freelance pool is bilingual. And that's because we not only provide matching service, but we also provide freelance back office tools so that our freelancers can focus on really selling their skills rather than having to do all the mundane stuff like contract management, invoicing, and things like that. And these tools are provided in Japanese and English, and also we run a community that's more of an international mindset. So by nature, we tend to have a lot of bilingual mindset folks. And so because of the fact that Japanese companies don't have bilinguals typically in their company, as they're trying to expand or build out foreign offices, I think that's where we can help to bring folks to their teams that can help bridge the organization in terms of language as well as culture of doing business in a new area and land.
Fascinating. And I know Oira is already used globally. So instead of what new markets or new geographies, since AI is a hot topic right now,
right.
Maybe share a little bit about how you're catching that wave with your platform.
Right. So yeah, we are a global company already. Except China, we operate in all other countries, and 40% of our users are actually living outside Japan. And as you mentioned, AI is here. And actually, like, I get this question a lot. Like, hey, you're doing human-based interpretation platform, but AI is there. There's ChatGPT whatsoever, or Pocket Talk, right? So the thing is, we are not actually competing with AI. What we do is we provide human-based interpretation services, and at the same time, we collect data. we collect data that is like interpretation, high quality human-made interpretation data. And with that data, you can train AI to be better in especially niche languages. Because for English, Chinese, like large or major languages, the performance of AI is pretty good. And if you can use it, please use it. But for minor languages, like niche languages, for instance, like Burmese, Indonesian, Vietnamese, those languages are actually not still in high quality. And if you ask, for instance, like ChatGPT today, to interpret between Japanese and Nepalese, it would reject you. So it does not do Nepalese interpretation. Why? Because there's not enough data to give a reliable and high quality service yet. So in that regard, we keep collecting data to improve the performance of AI, especially for interpretation. And in that regard, we don't really want to expand or focus our energies in expansion into US or Europe, where major languages actually exist. But we deliberately want to expand into Southeast Asia and Africa more to collect more data on niche languages.
Fascinating, very cool. So this is a startup conference. We have founders on the panel. And one of the steps in the journey of growing your business is usually having to fundraise. Some lucky ones may not have to, but I believe all three of you have gone through a part of this experience and maybe even doing the next one or having to go through it now as well. So how about a little bit about what that journey has felt like, given that you have international connections, international background, but you're based here. So I presume you've had to fundraise both locally and from overseas a little bit. We'd love a little bit of color around that, maybe starting with Erika.
Sure. Well, I started my business right in the middle of COVID in 2020, and everything is in lockdown. And I think how typically founders used to raise money is they would go to startup events like this, and then they would meet investors like Matt and ask for money. But unfortunately, because I started my business during the lockdown, I couldn't meet any investors. And so I contacted my old co-workers in the US to ask if they knew anybody in Japan. And then that's how I started to build out my network in Japan to meet investors here. But after I met a couple of investors and I started pitching. I mean, you get a ton of rejections. No, 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 no. And it's very hard in the beginning, if you're not used to it, to get no, being rejected, no, no after no. And, I used to just kind of cry in my bedroom by myself. But then after a while, I started to think, let me think about the feedbacks they're giving me. Is there something that I can, take away and input into my pitch and into the business to brush it up? And that kind of shift in my mentality was like very positive. And so then, I was able to find an investor that really believed in what we're trying to do, and that has been wonderful. And so the advice that I would have is like, don't take it personal if they reject you. It probably wasn't meant to be. It's kind of like finding a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Not everyone you can date. And so find that one person that you can really fall in love with, and because they're going to be with you a lot longer than the marriage in building the business.
Yeah, I've had a similar take on that as well. How about Raul?
Yeah, so in our case, we actually, at first, we just created a company in Estonia. And before even starting to build, we actually started participating in startup events in Japan as a Estonian startup. And it was kind of funny because we just had a bunch of slides and the concept and understanding about the market need, while we were participating already with much more advanced startups in different competitions. And for us, kind of pivotal event was the Tokyo Financial Award 2021, because we participated there as a kind of global company. We hadn't started building anything really yet, and we ended up winning the competition. So there was we got like 10 million yen as an award. We also got I mean it was actually, it's a big and very solid competition. Like second place was a Japanese company that did IPO this year, and third place was Unicorn from the UK. And we just basically, but winning this, it gave like very strong signal to investors as well. And like I was able to get first angel investments in. We started developing, and actually, yeah, like we did this kind of like rolling fundraise. It took like we didn't wait until we get all the money. We just if somebody decided, we just got the money, and yeah, we ended raising up actually 2 million euro pre-seed. So like Sanoku, which is in Japan quite a lot, but yeah, so it's like but it's never easy. Like you hear many no's. What's also important is that if you walk around here and you see the guys with like kind of yellow like ribbons, it doesn't mean that every one of them is like gonna invest in you, or like not even if it's a good fit. You have to also kind of create relationship, understand like what the investors actually are looking for, what's the stage, what's the area, what's the geography. And then maybe you have a chance. But yeah, it's basically like if you get a no, it's never also personal. It's just like it's maybe not meant to happen at this moment. Maybe in the future you should still keep them updated, and maybe in the future situation will change. But yeah, it's basically a game of persistence. So if you keep persisting, like as a startup, like yeah, you will not fail, but you have to keep persisting. Like once you stop that, you might fail, but not before.
Fascinating. And so, Oya, I understand that you've recently gone through the fundraising journey. Can you share, like, are any of your investors from overseas, or what's the composition like?
One angel investor only is American, but he lives in Japan. So other than that, like all of my investors are both angels and institutional ones. They are Japan-based. Yeah.
So it sounds like someone who resonates with the problem that you're trying to solve.
Right. And as for my actually journey, it was a little bit, I think, like unique in a way that in the beginning when I founded my company, it was like 8 years ago, I knew, like online researching, talking to founders, that it was a very hard, thing to do fundraising and getting so many no's. So what I did is that I actually didn't need much money just to, start the business. I just needed to make an app. So what I did is like I knocked the doors of the people that knew me personally. So basically angels, like my friends. And then I raised some money, just enough to make the app and go online. And that was fairly easy because like these people know you and these people support you. So my advice would be like if you can raise some money in the beginning from your friends and family, that's the best and the fastest, because you have to focus on your product. You have to focus on your business. Like fundraising is actually a full-time job. It's very, very time-consuming. So at the seed stage, like in the initial times, like 8 years ago, I did so. And then as a founder, I also always thought that fundraising is actually not a cool thing, because like as a founder and CEO, you have the responsibility to make the company profitable and not dependent on external money, and you should do that as soon as possible. So after that, I focused all my energy not to do fundraising, but making the company profitable. It took a few years, but I could do. So that was kind of, at that time I was not, dependent on external money anymore, so that was great. But again, one more learning is that for fast growth, you also need money. So making a company profitable is one thing, but you still, need extra cash to grow faster. So that was the reason that I, again, did another round, just like this year, and just recently closed.
Wow, congratulations. All right, we've got basically 30 seconds left. So a lot of Japanese panelists like to ask the question, a word of encouragement for the next generation of founders. Maybe just a sentence each, starting with Raul and down the line.
Yeah, so basically it's going to be hard, but basically do it only when you know that that's the thing, like that's the only thing you want to do.
There you go.
I mean, I guess it's kind of similar. It's freaking hard, but keep going, stay positive. If anything that's negative comes your way, just let it slide off you like Teflon and keep going forwards.
That's good.
Yeah, it's tough, but also it's really rewarding. I would never, exchange this experience with anything else. However, especially for foreigners starting up in Japan, what I would recommend is that I spent some of my years really trying to fit into the Japanese culture and how the Japanese business way, being kind of like nervous sometimes about, oh, am I really like fitting well or not? Just be yourself and be confident. If you do so, success will definitely come, even in a very unique country like Japan.
Great words of advice. How about a round of applause for our panelists? Thank you, everyone.